Morning, guys. Um, people name their YouTube channels. Um, I'm thinking I should name mine Crackhead Trucker. I seem to always be up making videos at these hours. Um, Primarily, it's just one of those things where I struggle to sleep. Um, I'm just anxious to get on with the day. I'm kind of a workaholic, so right now I got about an hour and a half before my 10 hours are up. I'm actually running an hours of service exempt load. Um, I got a COVID load going from West Coast. I'm sorry, from East Coast to West Coast. I went from South Carolina to Fresno, California. I'm about 250 miles from Fresno. I'm actually about a day ahead of schedule, so I'm not really in a big hurry. And when I say my 10-hour break is almost up, I still take my rest breaks even on these COVID exempt loads. Um, I the only thing I do that I guess you would say is bending the rules. By the time I get this load delivered, I'll be over my 70 hours. But again, they're COVID exempt, but I'm still taking my daily breaks. Anyway, enough about that. Um, in a lot of these hotshot groups, I keep seeing the question of big rig versus pickup truck, and you know is using a big rig for hot shotting even considered hot shotting anymore? So I'm going to make the statement, and I know a lot of people think it's kind of a hater statement, but the reality is most people using pickup trucks are not, I repeat, they are not hot shotting. The term has been adopted by them, I think, because they think it sounds cool, but the true definition of a hot shot load is one pick, one drop, dedicated truck, not a partial. They're paying for the whole truck to haul the load. If you have a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot box with a 200-pound piece inside of it, it's a dedicated truck and trailer, point A to point B. You do not stop for other loads, and they pay a premium. That is a hot shot. Picking up 5 loads to go cross country and they're all partials, you're doing LTL, you're doing general freight, and you're competing with the big boys that can put some of the same cargo inside of a set of doubles. Now, while you guys get mad and say, who's taking this cheap freight, if a company like Old Domination or CFI or any of these other companies that run doubles down the highway throw a 1,000-pound pallet in the back of one of these things and they take it or not, it really doesn't impact their operating cost because they already have a set of doubles rolling down the highway and they're just going to add one more pallet to it. And so taking that freight for less than $1 a mile does not impact their operating cost as badly as you think. What they're doing is they're adding to their existing capacity. They're already going to pay a driver, they're already paying for the truck, and they're already burning the fuel. Adding that one extra pallet doesn't cost them $1 a mile. And so that's what you're competing with when you say you're a hot shotter. Again, I'm not trying to put you guys down. A lot of respect for people that sleep in the back of a pickup truck. I have a 60-inch stand-up sleeper, and I feel crowded in here all the time. And it's just me. I'm not even sharing the sleeper with someone. I feel crowded in here, guys. You guys contorting yourselves to slide in and out of that, makeshift bed where you remove the back seat, tip my hat to you. Much respect, much love. Not trying to knock it, but a lot of people jump into hot shotting because you can walk up to a Ford, Chevy, or Ram dealership, and if you have halfway decent credit, you walk away with a pickup truck and probably over $1,000 a month truck payment, and you're in business. At that point, you can go rent or buy a gooseneck trailer for $300 a month, and you are an owner operator. Now, what ends up happening to a lot of these guys? They weren't ready for some of the costs. They weren't ready for the steep deterioration of the equipment. Some of the guys doing the lease from Enterprise, in most business models, I would say that makes no sense. But honestly, if you're a hot shotter and you're going to go buy a $60,000 pickup truck that you're going to put 100,000 miles on in the first year of its life, and you only put $1,000 down, a year later you still owe $50,000 and the truck's worth $30,000, you've now dug yourself a pretty deep hole. And so maybe the Enterprise setup isn't as bad an idea as you might think to start. Jump in, lease one, 60,000 miles later, you make that decision. Does this make sense or not? Am I really making money, or am I just turning dollars and not doing anything as a real net result? Hopefully by then you will have had, year end come, and maybe you do a tax return and a CPA tells you where you really stand. Then you make decisions. Anyway, so a constant question or conversation piece in a lot of the hotshot groups is, does it make more sense to buy a semi? And people always get, scared away with, well, they're $160,000, and your tires are $500 a piece, and everything is so expensive. You break down on the side of the highway, and it's $1,000 repair bill. A lot of these statements are true. Undoubtedly, a truck that's built to, in its first life, offer you 1 million miles worth of service is obviously going to cost more than a pickup truck that has about a 300,000 mile service life. Don't jump all up and down my comments. Well, I guess you can, whatever. A lot of people are going to say, oh no, a pickup truck can go 1 million miles. They can, but not when you're towing 100% of their tow capacity 90% of the time. They're not built for that. When you see these older pickup trucks with 1 million miles on them, a lot of times it's some guy that has a ranch and he's driving to and from town most of the time and occasionally tows a trailer. The hotshot guys, they're wearing these rigs out by towing 20 to 30,000 pounds most of the time. And so, having said that, you look at a semi-truck. I got this one opened up just because I guess I like the color blue. Blue is my favorite color. Anyway, so, here's a Cascadia. They're asking $34,900 for it, and it's got 524,000 miles on it. It's got a Detroit DD15 with 455 horse. The gear ratio is a 307, and it's a 48-inch sleeper. 48-inch sleeper is not a big sleeper, but this particular truck is a mid-rise. Doing a high-rise with a hotshot to me just makes no sense, because you're rarely going to be, 13.6 tall. But if you look at something like this, again, it's a mid-rise, so you can stand in it, unlike your pickup truck. And, this has been obviously cleaned up, and they put dressing on the engine and whatnot. That's kind of rare. It actually has the owner's manual. Very rare to buy a vehicle of this type and it still has the owner's manual. That could be a build sheet. No, it looks like a maintenance sheet. Anyway, so I mean, it's a typical Freightliner. Some are you going to say, oh, Freightliners are garbage, they fall apart. You know, get yourself a Peterbilt, they're built to last. You know, Freightliners are junky. To that I say, I challenge you to show me a 500,000-mile pickup truck that is in much better shape than this. A Freightliner is going to hold together as well as any Ford, Chevy, or Ram with the 500,000 miles on it. Tow Piglet recently sold a 500,000-mile pickup truck, and if you watch his videos, you'll see that as he was kind of going through it and refurbishing it, and he didn't really refurbish it, but he painted it and put some wheels on it, yada, yada, yada. But you saw, he took it out, and it was a constant breakdown, right? And so this truck here will outperform, outlast, and definitely give you 100% better return on investment than that 500,000-mile pickup truck that Alex sold, or any 500,000-mile pickup truck. And so, honestly, this truck here, if I were looking to buy a truck and do hotshot, you know, exclusively, this truck for $34,900, I would put my money on it before a $60,000 brand new pickup truck. Now, the difference is I've been around trucks my whole life. A lot of the service stuff I can do to it. I don't fear what these things are. If I remember right, this one might be an automatic. Yep. So I would stay away from it just because it's an automatic. I know how to shift, and for the issues that automatics come with, I would just stay away from an automatic. And right now you're thinking to yourselves, why are you showing us an automatic then if you yourself wouldn't buy one? That's because most people, oh, excuse my alarm. I set my alarm usually an hour before I'm going to hit the road. It's time to grab a shower, shave, and get ready to make some money. Anyway, so I'm showing this truck because a lot of people stay away from the big trucks because, well, you know, I don't know how to shift a 10-speed or a 13-speed. You know, they don't know how to float gears, and they're afraid of missing a gear going downhill. You know, another thing you have to consider with these things, yes, the tires are way more expensive. Under normal use, this truck here would probably be towing 2 trailers. The rear axle is rated for 20,000 pounds. The front axle is rated for 12,000 pounds. So this thing has a gross vehicle weight rating of like 32 at minimum. And you need to understand that its braking potential is capable of 32,000 pounds. And its gross combined vehicle weight rating is 80,000 pounds. Most of your hotshots are only putting 30,000 behind these things. This truck here probably weighs, I'm going to guess a little bit high, but I'll say 15,000 pounds empty, and I'm probably overshooting that. It probably weighs a little less. But let's just say 15, and then you're going to put 30 behind it, so you're grossing 45. You're not going to put a lot of wear and tear on the engine and drivetrain in general with this thing at half of what it's rated for. Your life expectancy is going to grow tremendously on this truck because you're not going to be doing 80,000 pounds. You're going to be doing 40, 50 on the high side. And so that's what one of these things are. I'm on Truck Paper. I'm sure most of you guys recognize it. There are, you know, several trucks in this same price range. I think I did another video where I showed this particular truck. Yep, this is the one. If I were to buy this one, I'd remove that fairing off the top because you don't need it, at least not for what hot shotters do. But here's kind of examples of what is available. I'm not a fan of the ProStars. I'd stay away from it. They're just not, they're not durable trucks. And so, here's in that price point. These green trucks, I believe, are old Domination trucks. They put a lot of miles on their trucks before they sell them. I can tell you that just because I had a buddy that drove for them, and yeah, there you go. It's almost a 1,000,000-mile truck. Would I be afraid of it? No, they have a very good maintenance program. Who knows if this particular seller has access to those maintenance records? The bigger problem with a fleet like this is they typically don't assign a truck like this to one driver. It's what they call like a floating fleet or a slip seat. Guys jump in and out regularly. Probably wouldn't jump in on that, but I will show you guys. I have purchased from Ritchie Brothers. Now, mind you, I have mechanics, and when I say mechanics, I've got technicians, and I have the computer programs that are licensed by the OEM, and so I can plug into these things and read their real numbers. This is Ritchie Brothers, and it's the result part. It's not an open bid. These are prices of what things have sold for. I have 3 accounts with them from my 3 different businesses, and so I have access to look at bid results. And so here's a truck. Again, I'm showing a Freightliner. I'm not a huge fan, but for hot shotting, for a single person that's going to drive the truck himself, there's nothing really wrong with these things. If you were going to do a fleet application where people jump in and out constantly, or if you were going to do like what we do and try and go off-road with them in the oil field, these things don't hold up to that type of abuse. It's kind of why I run the Mack product. My Macks they're built for off-road. They're just tough trucks. Anyway, and a lot of people aren't fans of Macks either. So I mean, that's to each his own. So here's a little truck, sold for $35,000, and if you look at the miles, it's under 300,000 miles for $35,000. This is not a bad looking little truck. Again, it's a, some people call these 2 axles, some call them single axles. I tend to call them single, but it's a single axle. It is a high rise, which is probably not beneficial to what you guys are looking for, but for the kind of miles on it, and for as clean as this thing looks, I'd consider one. The double bunk, it will allow you to do the team operation. If you were a car hauler running cars cross country, that would probably even be beneficial. But at that price, for $35,000, under 300,000 miles, I'd consider it, even if it's not the perfect fit. Excuse the day cabs. Filtering on the bid results is less detailed than filtering otherwise. And I only did the last year. I don't have it open to like several years worth of bid results, primarily because the current market is the current market, and looking at a bid result from 2 years ago makes no sense. Is this the same one we just looked at? I think so. This looks to be a different one. So this one has a slightly bigger engine. you look at it, it's got the, they call it the 15 liter, even though it's a 14.8. And I'm waiting for my page to load it. But anyways, there's another example. That one's got a longer wheelbase, looks like a bigger sleeper. It's got the long hood. They need that to accommodate the bigger engine with the taller intercooler in front of the radiator. So if you look at these things on a side profile, the ones that have the really steep nose are going to be the smaller engines, the 13 liter, and then the ones with the longer hose are going to have longer hose. The longer hood is going to have the bigger engine. I've been told the two engines will fit in each other's spots, but the need for a larger radiator and a larger air charge cooler in the front requires the nose to be longer and less of an angle to accommodate the square inches that the air charge cooler needs in front. Anyway, so this isn't a bad little truck for 30 grand. It's got really low miles like the other one. I may be showing the same one again. My apologies if I am. But nonetheless, that gives you kind of an idea of the trucks that are available at these price points. People talk about maintenance costs. For a couple $100, you can buy all the parts to service a single axle for brakes. Now, that doesn't include the drums, but for $300, you can replace the drums, pads, springs. When I say springs, I'm talking brake springs, not leaf springs. The bigger issue is you need to pick the truck up, pull the wheels off, and most people don't have the ability to do that. If you're going to buy one of these trucks, you have to buy yourself a 20-ton jack. You have to buy yourself an impact gun that can remove these tires. A lot of servicing can be done by an owner-operator, no different than doing your pickup truck. And someone's going to say, well, the last thing I want to do when I get home is work on the truck. If you look through these groups, you'll see pictures of hotshotters doing their own brakes, changing their own oil, doing that kind of stuff. That's part of being a business owner. If you want to be that business owner that just steers the truck, and when you get home you have everybody else do your thing for you, it's kind of like home ownership. You have two different kinds of homeowners. You have that homeowner that on the weekend cuts his grass, paints that trim that's looking kind of bad around the side of the house, is constantly doing home improvement. You have that homeowner, and then you have the homeowner that comes home and, lawn service took care of his deal. He hired a handyman to come and, hang some gutters, whatever. The difference between a homeowner and a business is, in the end, your business is your business is going to be successful or not depending on how you make your books balance. And a lot of times when you go from a 1 to a 5 truck operation, it's sweat equity that gets you there. Most people don't have a couple $100,000 to invest and start these businesses and sit back and say, I'm going to be an executive. Myself included, this is now my 3rd business, and I have put sweat equity into each one. I'm in the sleeper to one right now. I'm out in the field, putting in miles, putting in work. That's just who I am, and that's how I make my businesses grow. Now, granted, my trucking business is on the rebound. Oil field collapsed on me. We own 20 trucks, and most of them are parked, but I own them outright. I don't owe the bank money. I don't have, I don't have a creditor coming after me trying to take these things away from me, even though most of them have been stopped all year. Again, sweat equity. I try and be where I'm needed most in my business. If I were to buy this truck and I was just starting out in this trucking world, I would learn how to service my own brakes, adjust them myself, doing things like changing shocks yourself, changing your oil, all of these types of services you can do yourself. And honestly, I would, when I replace tires, pick the best one and throw a spare. You've seen it done before. Throw a spare tire up behind the sleeper, tie it down. Make sure you tie it down, because if you don't, you get a ticket for unsecured load. Ask me how I know. And don't use bungees. Make sure you use real tie downs. Anyway, so this compared to a pickup truck. You buy this truck for $30,000. You put 100,000 miles on it. A truck like this, you can still turn around and sell it when it has 1 million miles on it and not take that big a hit. You know, there's no guarantee this seller is going to get $25,000 for this truck. Obviously, it's an open market and the market fluctuates. But, you know, this truck here looks almost like the other one. It's a 14 and it's got 700,000 miles on it, for argument's sake. And so if you compare it to this one, which is a 16 model with way less miles. And so do that with the pickup truck. Go purchase a brand new pickup truck, put a couple 100,000 miles on it, and see how much it depreciates. You're going to argue, well, the maintenance, if you purchase well, you know, if when you look at this truck, it's got good rubber on it, 80% left. You know, these tires wear out in about 250,000 miles if you're running them at maximum gross vehicle weight. Your gooseneck only puts about 4,000 or 5,000 pounds worth of tongue weight down on the back of one of these things. If anything, you're going to be wearing these tires out in the center because you're not loading them. You're probably going to have to air them down a little bit to get them to sit flat on the ground. Honestly, they'll even ride a little better. And so, what are you going to wear out in a couple 100,000 miles? You know, you're going to have regular things that break. You know, you're probably going to have to service your air conditioning within that time. You're probably going to have to adjust the valves within that time. Honestly, most guys that are mechanically inclined with basic hand tools, with the exception of the spacer tool, which you can buy on Amazon for, you know, $100, if that, most guys can do their own valve adjustment. Honestly, I'm pretty sure most of you aren't adjusting your valves on your pickup trucks either. And that's about 100,000 mile service interval. I can do mine. I'm mechanically inclined that way. A lot of the older trucks had a service interval of 500,000 miles for doing rods and main bearings. They say on the new ones, you don't have to do it anymore. I would do it for peace of mind. The kit's like $700. It'll take you an afternoon. Honestly, the way I would do it, I would drop the pan like on a Friday night and let the block drip all night. So when you go under there, you're not getting drops of oil on your face. But I would come in the next morning and bust that job out. While you're under there, you can look at the underside as you're rotating the rotating assembly. You can look at your liners and verify you still have plenty of crosshatch left, so your engine's healthy. You might even take pictures, so if you do sell this in 100,000 miles or so, you have documentation. Hey, look, I was under here. This is what the liners look like. I did rods and mains. They were done X amount of miles ago, and your next buyer will be more inclined to purchase your truck when they're comparing it to all the others. So, what other service costs are higher? Well, I mentioned how cheap your brakes are to do. The reality is, a truck like this with a 10-speed and real jakes pulling you down, at most speeds, a 10-speed transmission, you will have the option of 2 gears for the same speed. So let's say you're doing 65 going down a hill, you can probably pick between 2 gears. Let's just say ninth and 10th. Within each gear, you have 3 speeds or settings on your retarder. So 2 gears times 3 settings is 6 individual settings you can use for jaking, and considering you're only running a 30,000-pound trailer behind you, most grades will not require you to apply the service brakes to maintain the right speed. I'm sure you guys have all seen the gauntlet when they do these truck challenges. You know, all these YouTubers, that's how they compare Ford, Chevy, and Dodge. And you can tell these knuckleheads aren't even truck guys. You know, they say they're editors, they're journalists, and you're like, really, bro? Because I wouldn't be applying my brakes that much. I'm a trucker. I use my jakes. I don't use my service brakes. If you have to apply your brakes 5 times to come down the gauntlet, you're going too fast. You're in the wrong gear. That's the reality. I live on the West Coast, and it's been kind of a coincidence, but in the last week, I've had 3 trucks go down the Grapevine, and 2 of them have never been down the Grapevine before. So I kind of walked them through how you do it. It's really simple. There's a speed limit, 35 miles an hour. And I've told them all the same thing. Find the gear for 30 miles an hour. You start going downhill and pick a gear that holds the truck, jakes only. If you can't hold the truck, jakes only at 35, slow the truck down, drop another gear, and then go jakes only the rest of the way. So both drivers told me that in the whole Grapevine, they applied the service brakes once. What does that tell you about my drivers versus these guys doing the pickup truck thing, or just a pickup truck in general? If you're applying your service brakes to hold a speed, you're in the wrong gear, and you're wearing out your brakes sooner than you need to. The truck I'm driving right now, so far this year, I've put, I'm going to say like 70 or 80,000 miles on it. I still have 80% left on my brakes, and they're the same brakes that were on this truck when I purchased it 160,000 miles ago. Why? I don't use my service brakes. The truck has a braking supplemental system. Learn how to use it correctly, use it abundantly. There's no need to wear out your brakes. Tires, same thing. I haven't worn out tires on this truck. I did have to replace a steer tire. I had an issue with the front end on this thing, and I had one start to come apart. Replaced that. I had an air conditioning failure. The clutch failed on it. Fixed it. I had a radiator leak, which, you know, did we buy this truck with that? I don't know. But personally, if you look at investments like this versus an investment on a pickup truck, there is no comparing the serviceability of a semi-truck versus a pickup truck. A pickup truck will fall apart, degrade, and deteriorate in 300,000 miles. If you make it to 500,000 miles, you have to be mechanically inclined to keep it going anyway. And so the argument that, well, Miguel, you know, I don't want to be working on my truck every weekend when I come home, you know, that's just not for me. Tell me that you're going to buy a brand new 2020 pickup truck and you're going to be able to sell it when you pay it off. maybe I'm asking that question incorrectly. For you to be able to sell your truck and get something back out of it, you have to finance it over 4 years. At 400,000 miles in 4 years, if you pay your truck off, you might get some money back for it. I know a lot of you are financing your trucks for 5 and 6 years because the manufacturer supplemented financing offers that. So finance your truck for 6 years. Tell me you're going to keep it for 6 years, put 100,000 miles on it, and in the last 2 years of that truck's life, you're not going to be constantly working on it. Working on equipment is part of the trucking business. If you're not prepared for that, you're not prepared for this business. Maintenance is a key component. Now, as I look at a lot of these groups on Facebook in particular, you see a lot of guys working on their stuff, and kudos, that's part of this business. You see them replacing axles on the trailers. You see them, fixing wiring issues. You see them constantly working on their trucks. That is what the trucking business is about. If you think the trucking business is about, I'm going to buy a brand new King Ranch and be the cool guy rolling down the highway in my brand new pickup truck, that's fine for the first year. If you think you're not going to get oil under your nails owning that truck, you got another thing coming. You either need to go out and buy another 10 trucks quick where there's enough profit to cover the overhead of your salary to sit behind a desk and point fingers. I reached that point with my particular company, with my trucks. I own a fleet of them. I had an in-house safety guy just to manage all of the DOT compliance stuff. I had a service manager with, at one point, 5 guys walking around the shop. And so when you get to that point, yes, you can say, I don't want to get dirty. Now that we've scaled back and it's just a handful of trucks, even right now as I'm looking at my hands, I got some grime under my nails. I was under my truck just a couple days ago fixing something. It is a part of this business, whether it's on a pickup truck or it's on a semi truck. So if you think the maintenance part of the semi is what makes the difference, it's because you haven't geared yourself up to handle a lot of it yourself. If you buy any truck, you need a way to lift it. If you talk to any hotshot or even in a pickup truck, they carry an electric impact gun with them so they can quickly change a flat. And yes, that is an area where a pickup truck has an advantage. It's very easy for you to jump out and change, a 17 or an 18-inch tire. It's easier to do, undoubtedly. But I guarantee you're going to be replacing those smaller tires, whether they blew out or wore out, far more frequently than on a semi-truck. About 80,000 miles, I think is what I said I've done on this truck so far this year. I had one tire come apart on me, and I didn't have to change it myself. It started to come apart. I felt the vibration. Luckily, I was a mile from a tire shop. I didn't have to, pull over and wait for tire service. You have to stay on top of your maintenance stuff to avoid some of that. But when it does happen, yes, a semi-truck is going to cost you more, but it's going to happen way less frequently. Big repairs are another story. Your big repairs are going to cost you more. An engine overhaul is definitely pricey. A truck like this, the odds of needing one anytime soon are minimal. Before you purchase something like this, me personally, oil samples are in order. I would show up with some sort of code reader where you can read what codes are in the ECM. You can also look at events such as engine overspeed, overheats, things like that. So you're not buying someone's problem child. A driver let the truck get away from him going downhill with the jakes on, and he over-revved the engine. You do an oil sample, and there's excessive material in the oil. Then you think to yourself, well, does it have a spun bearing? You know, you walk away from that one and you just go to the next one. Purchasing the right truck is the huge difference, and I get why a lot of people just getting into the business say, well, I'm going to walk up to the dealership and just sign on the dotted line because I'm getting a brand new truck. That doesn't always work. I'm a fan of the Cummins powered pickup truck. I own a few of them. I got one of them that's a 2004, and I've had it through multiple businesses. It served me well. I'm probably never going to sell that truck. I've got some newer ones, but today if you go buy a brand new one, my understanding is that CP4 is something that's going to bite you no matter what you do. I've had very bad experiences with Fords in the past. The newer ones are obviously better, but in the 2000s, the 6-liter almost bankrupted my other business. I had 5 6-liter motors. And my thought was, hey, it's a Ford, the 7.3's always been great. These things are, smaller, lighter, stronger. It's the wave of the future. Let's buy some of these. Yeah, almost bit me in the butt. Well, it did bite me in the butt. And so likewise, buying a brand new pickup truck does not mean you're going to be guaranteed success with your equipment purchase. That's the bottom line. GM has also had problems in previous models with overheating issues and stuff like that. And so there's no guarantee. You jump into $1,000 to a $1,200 truck payment thinking everything's going to be hunky-dory, and the next thing you know, your truck's sitting at the dealership and you're sucking payments out of your pocket, and now all of a sudden you can't make your house payment, or you have to take your pick. Am I going to make my house payment, or am I going to make my truck payment? The same thing would happen with the semi-truck, obviously, only there's no warranty with the semi-truck. And so that's kind of where you separate the men from the boys. In any business, no guts, no glory. You have to take a risk. If you're not mechanically inclined, obviously take a service guy, some sort of technician that can look these things over and give you a clean bill of health. And these are steps you would take to purchase a larger truck. Now, what happens if you pick a good one? A truck like this, you could run it for years. And not just for years after you no longer have a payment. That's the key. You pay this thing off, let's say you finance it for 4 years. You pay this thing off, you could probably run this thing into a 1,000,000-mile mark, easy. Would you really want to stick with hot-shotting that long? I guess hot-shotting is a different game when you have a sleeper. It doesn't beat you up as bad. Again, hats off to you guys that sleep in the back of a pickup truck. I couldn't do that. I go out in my sleeper and I stay out sometimes 2 weeks. I get a little claustrophobic, I guess you could say. And not even claustrophobic, I just feel like I wish I had more room. If I had a shower in here, it'd be awesome. But you guys that sleep in those confined little spaces and no real room, the other thing to consider is not just the comfort when you sleep, but the comfort when you drive. You'd have to drive one of these things to realize the trailer is now not the bully pushing around the truck. The truck now controls the trailer. And so instead of getting that crazy jarring that you guys get when your trailer's not balanced perfectly, that little gooseneck's not going to be able to push this truck around as easily. Having that weight under you helps. The fuel mileage is another issue that people always bring up. A truck like this, geared the way it is, this one doesn't say gearing, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think this one did. A lot of these things now are geared very high. They're geared to run 70 miles an hour down the highway turning 1200 RPM, getting 7.5 to 8 miles to the gallon, and you're saying, well, that's what my hot shot gets when I'm hauling 5 cars. That's what these things get hauling 80,000 pounds. And so now you're going to go down to hauling 30,000 pounds. In theory, you could gear ratio these things even higher and get better mileage. There's no reason why you couldn't get almost 10 miles to the gallon out of a rig like this running the lightweight hotshot loads you guys have. Ultimately, that's the biggest thing to consider. If you say this truck's gross vehicle weight rating combined is 80,000 pounds, you're going to be running at 50% capacity on everything. So fuel consumption will be better, wear and tear will be better. All the numbers that you compare a big rig to a pickup truck is compared when a big rig is doing 80,000 pounds. You guys aren't doing 80,000 pounds. It's almost like the truck is going to go into semi-retirement and you're going to be using it for leisure. That's probably the simplest way to put it. Anyway, I've rambled on, kind of went in circles. I didn't have any kind of notes to stay on point. My apologies. Obviously, my belief is if I were to do hotshot type work, or hotshot as it's known in these Facebook groups, basically hauling lightweight general freight on a LTL basis, this is what I would do. I do have some hotshots. They're pickup trucks. In fact, my pickup trucks are 3/4 ton, but they run a 50-mile radius in the oil field. Typically, it's pick up 1 or 2 crates and haul it out to a location and come back to the yard. And so for that, I don't need an F450 or any other kind of dually. If somebody needs anything bigger than that, I send a flatbed out with a semi truck. That's just how we operate in the oil field. For over the road, I wouldn't put a pickup truck over the road. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to do 100,000 miles on a vehicle that depreciates so tremendously, and it's a niche market to begin with. But so again, my apologies for the rambling. You guys have a good morning. I need to get ready and get showered and hit the road. Time's burning. That's money. Have a good day, guys.